When we first started, we used to have this saying, we used to call it the curse of the guest speaker page. And it was such an interesting thing. So when we first started, we host events where people go through an interview process and they get to come to New York, LA, Atlanta, Orlando, and they sit down with like 35 of the most powerful people in the entertainment industry. People who can snap their fingers and change their life in 30 seconds or less, right? That's our value add. But when we first started, we met some incredible speakers, but they weren't like the vice president of Warner Brothers. They might have been like the head of casting or something. And what we noticed is if we put them up on the speaker page, they literally their heads blew up because for the first time somebody was like putting them up on this like page, and their significance just went through the roof. So now all of a sudden, they would come to the event like all like just too much to handle. So I don't know if that's like a bad story or not, but I learned that how you position people is affects like the type of person you work with, who you surround yourself with, and how you position them has like an effect on not only them but how they affect you. And I've seen another great story with this too is we work with a lot of agents, and a lot of times what I noticed with some, and I'm talking some big agents, like I'm talking agents who represent major people on television, like people like major shows that you would, I can say names, but you would know them if I drop their names. And what I noticed with the agents is they have that same issue where they'll have somebody who kind of, is doing a lot of TV film. They're, somewhat moving up the ladder, but they get that one breakout role where all of a sudden now magazines want to interview them. Um, you know, uh, television shows, and their personality gets out of hand very quickly. They start demanding that. I saw a YouTube video. It was with he was like the Secretary of Defense, or he was a military person. I don't know if you saw this video, but he tells this story that when he had this position, he was speaking at an event, and they flew him there first class. They had a limo waiting for him. He was staying at a five-star hotel. They had somebody pick him up and drive him to the event. And when he arrived at the event, they had this nice cup of coffee in a porcelain, cup waiting for him. And then the following year, he was no longer in that position, but he still was invited to speak at the event. They flew him there instead of first class. He flew coach. Then he, had to get an Uber to get to the hotel. And then when he showed up in the morning to speak, he had asked, is there any coffee? They pointed him over to where the coffee was, and he had to go get his own cup of coffee in a paper little cup. And his story was, he says that the porcelain cup wasn't ever meant for him. It was meant for the position of who he was. And I thought it was such an interesting story because it related to so many times where somebody, you get this notoriety, you get this taste of fame, and all of a sudden if you don't stay humble, that it goes away. It's like it's not that they're really interested in you. They're interested in the magic of who you are as that character, who you are because of on that cover of the magazine. Like they're talking to you about your life and your story, but in reality, like a week later, a month later, a year later, that fame will fade. Like you have to consistently adapt to the industry. If you're not consistently changing and adapting, with AI, the types of shows that people are interested in, the demographics of age, how people change, what people were interested in watching 10 years ago is going to be a lot different than what people are interested in now. You see the consistent involvement of the industry. So people have to realize that. And I've seen so many people make these mistakes. And it's interesting because I'm, as a producer and investor, I have, financial gain from seeing people to be successful, but I'm getting this, bird's eye view of seeing how that affects people. And even I myself, when I first got into business, it's fun to go to an event. We do virtual calls and boot camps and challenges, and we talk to thousands and thousands of people every year, and then we'll do a live event. And all of a sudden, you show up at this event, and like people are coming up to you wanting to take your photo, and they like know so much about you, like they read your book, and it feels good, right? It's kind of creepy, but it kind of feels good too. But
Yeah.
I learned very quickly not to allow that to lead into my significance, to know that it's like my moral obligation to help serve people, to give them the best that I can, to over deliver, to bring more value. And I always try to be humble in it, but there is always sometimes I feel like maybe I should step more into that, right? Maybe would it help the business, when you become that avatar, you become, that recognized figure, a Tony Robbins, a Russell Brunson, so forth, and Alex Hormozy, where you're leaning into that character. Does that allow you to reach more people? Or and how do you control not becoming overly inflated in your head? So, I kind of turn it on, turn it off. So when I'm on camera, I could be one way, but then myself, I'm like really like, when I'm working at home or in my personal life, very introverted. I don't know if that answers your question, but we
Definitely.
got some good sound bites there.
Oh yeah, a lot of gold nuggets there. I love that. If you want to save time on watching all the episodes, but still get all the gold nuggets that we find from interviewing these 7, 8, and 9-figure entrepreneurs, then you can get all of that inside of the 2 Comma Club newsletter. Just go to 2ccnewsletter.com and subscribe.